I predict that when the dust settles, be it days, weeks, or months after the film's release, Mulan will be considered a failure.
Total recast.
As stated by Disney itself, they need this film to perform well in China. The budget was $200 million. The promotional budget is typically the same size as the film's actual budget, so $400 million. But the film is going to need a whole new advertising push next month. Even if that's only half the original amount, that's $100 million, bringing the estimated cost of the film to $500 million. That means it needs to make around $500 million just to break even. There's no denying that Disney live-action remakes have been successful by and large. Beauty and the Beast, $1.2 billion. Dumbo, $353 million. Aladdin, $1 billion. Lion King, $1.6 billion. Maleficent 2, $492 million. At the time of recording this audio, Disney's live-action Mulan movie is set to release in theaters on July 24th, 2020. Disney's latest release, Artemis Fowl, just hit fledgling streaming service Disney Plus after bypassing theaters entirely. Reviews are bad, but I don't trust critics, who are usually motivated by personal politics, bribes, and threats. Disney has a number of reasons to release Mulan in theaters, primarily the revenue brought in by box office returns. But how will the film perform? Not just in theaters, but overall. Is it even likely to release on the 24th as planned? I predict that Mulan will be considered a failure. I've got my reasons. Here are some of them. Number 10, jilted American audience. For years now, China has proven to be a coveted market for American movie studios. More recently, the public has become increasingly aware that some studios are chasing the Chinese dollar, to the extent that film performance there is actually more important to a studio than its domestic gross. The filmmakers behind Mulan have stated that the film is targeting China and has been designed to appeal to a Chinese audience, or at least its censorship bureau. The 1998 animated film was aimed at American families. This film is not, and Disney has clearly stated that fact. We've seen how telling people, or a group, that something is not for them turns out. A humorless, bloodless, heartless, neutral film is not the kind of thing Americans want. Number 9, negative American perception of China. A movie celebrating Chinese culture really couldn't come at a worse time. The media is pushing America to be pro-China, while China seems, maliciously or not, to be giving the US a lot of problems. American media says the real danger is racist Americans, but there is no denying China's national sentiment is anti-capitalist and anti-American. I don't think Westerners currently have an appetite for Chinese mythology, nor will they for some time. Number 8, too different from the original. No wisecracking dragon sidekick here. No love story either. Why? See number 10. It's a war drama. It's PG-13, a bloodless war epic. And most notably, it is not a musical. This is a major departure from the more recent Disney remakes. Shang, Mulan's superior and love interest, is no longer the love interest. There will be a new soldier character instead, whom Mulan won't so much as kiss. This is going to be a serious film, or at least one that takes itself seriously. So no trio of comic relief soldiers, no songs about a girl worth fighting for, and without its memorable songs and recognizable characters, what is the appeal of this film? No comedy for the kids, no love story for the moms. The 1998 film was joyful. This one seems sterile. Number 7. Middling success of the original. As Disney animated movies go, Mulan was not one of the more successful. Mulan was part of an era known as the Disney Renaissance, a period from 1989 to 1999. The animated films released by Disney during this period include The Little Mermaid in 1989, The Rescuers Down Under in 1990, Beauty and the Beast in 1991, Aladdin in 1992, The Lion King in 1994, Pocahontas in 1995, The Hunchback of Notre Dame in 96, Hercules in 97, Mulan in 98, and Tarzan in 99. In regard to the box office returns, The Little Mermaid made $233 million, which was a big hit at the time. The Rescuers Down Under was pretty much a failure. It opened poorly, and then Disney just basically gave up on it. Pulled the advertising, just let it sort of like sink into obscurity. But it's actually a good film, but it's one of the forgotten movies of that era. Beauty and the Beast was a huge hit, $440 million. Aladdin even better at $504 million. Lion King, an staggering $968.5 million. And this is at a time before billion-dollar box offices were common. Pocahontas at the time was considered a failure by comparison because it only brought in about $346 million. Now that's good. That's better than Little Mermaid a few years earlier, but coming off of The Lion King, making about a third what The Lion King made, and being kind of critically panned, it was considered a failure at the time. Hunchback of Notre Dame did slightly worse than Pocahontas, $325 million. It's kind of one of the more uneven films in terms of tone and everything, and maybe not the best choice for Disney to make into, do its Disney formula on. Although it worked fine with Little Mermaid. I mean, if you knew what the original Little Mermaid story is, you would think that wouldn't make much of a Disney film either. Hercules, again, I think this is one that was not a good choice for a subject material, and probably kind of just came too soon. You would think that a Hercules animated movie nowadays, with sort of like all the Marvel stuff, would probably do a lot better. But I like this movie. It's certainly not the strongest, but it's good. But the box office was certainly not the strongest, only $252.7 million for Hercules, so you see a gradual decline here. And I think that maybe Hunchback hurt Hercules in terms of box office. I think that people went to see Hunchback, and they were like, nah, and then that hurt Hercules, kind of Last Jedi effect. But then Mulan came after Hercules, so you would think, okay, Hercules is a good movie, so you think that would help Mulan. Well, Mulan did $304 million. So better than Little Mermaid, but when you compare it to something like Pocahontas, which was considered a failure at the time, it did worse. And it did worse than Hunchback. It did a little bit better than Hercules. And then Tarzan came, and Tarzan was considered kind of disappointing in terms of performance as well, but Tarzan actually made $150 million more than Mulan, and Tarzan was the last film of the so-called Renaissance period. So when you look at it, how these films stack up, if you're going to drop out Rescuers Down Under, which was sort of an aberration. From Little Mermaid to Tarzan, where does Mulan stack up? Okay, that's 9 movies, and Mulan outperformed only 2 of them. So in terms of performance, it's number 7 out of 9. If you throw the Rescuers in there, it's number 6 out of 10. So it doesn't make the top 5s. And when you compare it to something like Aladdin, Aladdin made $200 million more than Mulan. Mulan $300 million, Aladdin $500 million. So as far as like being hugely beloved, this big classic Disney film, yeah, I do think it's considered to be a classic Disney film, and I do think it has its fans. But does it really stack up in terms of like fan base and nostalgia to something like Beauty and the Beast? I don't think so. Number 6, delayed too long. The hype train for this movie started rolling late last year. The first trailer was released in early December of 2019. The film was scheduled to be released in the United States on March 27, 2020. Its new release date is 3 months later than originally planned, and over 6 months since the marketing machine started. Historically, the longer a film was delayed, the worse it performs, and this film has been delayed a long time. So by the time it does show up, are people going to still be excited? Are they kind of going to feel like, oh, that? Yeah, who remembers that? Number 5, betting on China. And by betting on China, I mean Disney is betting on China. As stated by Disney themselves, this film needs to perform well in China. It's targeted at China. But will Disney be satiated by the starchy soy milk of the communist teat? I doubt it. Star Wars failed there despite a huge marketing push. Avengers was very successful, but those were superior films. And in the case of Mulan, you're basically trying to sell ice to Eskimos. When it comes to Chinese historical epics, China makes a lot of them. So is China more likely to see a film about Chinese culture made by Americans, or one made by their own people? Supposedly the lead actress is not well liked in her home country. China has been proven to reject their own stars, and her speaking out in favor of authorities and against protesters, it definitely won't be something that wins her any points here. And though that may have been sort of like not really big news, or been only middling news a while back, I think that it's a bigger story to the Chinese people. An example of Chinese people rejecting their own stars would be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which was a success in America, but not in China. And also, who's to say that the advice that Disney is getting from Chinese censors is good advice in terms of what the people actually want? I mean, it's not like they have much of a choice. If they want that Chinese money, they have to adjust the film. They have to. But are those adjustments actually going to be what the Chinese viewing audience wants? I mean, obviously, Hollywood doesn't know what Americans want. Look at all the flops. They're listening to the wrong people. People with a political agenda tell studios what American audiences want. And according to them, that's a bunch of social justice messaging. Wrong. That's wrong. Chinese censors are telling Disney what the Chinese audience wants. Yeah, I'm sure They really got the finger on the pulse of what the people want out there. Obviously, the Chinese censors are telling Disney not what the people want. They're telling them what they're allowed to give them. The censors have no stake in the film's success. The country has no stake in the film's success. Their loyalty is to the Chinese government. It actually benefits them if the Americans fail. Number 4, desperate Disney. Disney needs money. Badly. Their biggest earner, the parks, are closed. And they're borrowing billions to stay afloat. They were spending big before the pandemic, like the money would never stop flowing, and then it stopped flowing. They spent like, what? Ridiculous billions and billions of dollars on Fox. I'll put the actual number up on screen. Fox wasn't worth that. And that's pretty much the reason why they S-canned Eisner. They were just like, you did what? It's like, no. They were just like, no, it's all good. You know, it's like they had a couple drinks at the party and just started ordering bottle service and just like, you know. And then when the rent came due, it was just like, whoops. And at this point, it's likely that Disney will no longer just be content with the Chinese market. They want to woo back the American market too. But the film was not made for Americans. So what's to be done? It's too costly to reshoot. Re-edit? Maybe. But short of putting Mushu back in and putting the songs back in and just sort of like redoing the whole movie, I mean, what could be done? Well, they can change the marketing. You see this all the time. You see a movie that's advertised like it's an action movie, like Final Fantasy The Spirits Within had like 2 action moments in the whole damn movie, and that was the trailer. It's like, look, it's an action movie. No, it's not. You're lying to people. So yeah, that's probably what they'll do. They'll change the marketing, because early on it was like, this is an epic. This is like a Spielbergian like war movie. This is like PG-13 Private Ryan, you know. This is such a beautiful, like, enchanting sort of a movie. It's just like, no, it's boring. It's going to be freaking boring. So how will they try to sell it? I mean, they've tried virtue signaling. You know, that's an easy thing to do. Just like, oh, it's important. It's about China. If you don't go see it, you're racist against China. If you don't go see it, you know, you're turning your back on a female protagonist. You have to send a positive message. You have to save the world by seeing our movie. What a bunch of crap. So yeah, you can spin you can spin it. Instead of Disney wants Chinese money, you can say Disney promotes cultural sensitivity. But will the Karens drag their spawn to movie theaters for virtue points? I doubt it. So yeah, besides Disney trying to guilt an audience into seeing the film, I mean, see it or you're racist. I think Americans are really getting more and more wise to this kind of blatant manipulation. So if they do go that route, I think it will backfire. But in terms I don't think really anything can save this movie marketing-wise. But trying to say, like, you know, see it or you're sexist, see it or racist, which they might go. I mean, these studios are pretty tone-deaf. They might go that way because they think that because everybody that lives in frickin' California is an SJW, they think that the whole world is SJWs, but half the country voted for Trump, guys. Whatever Disney does, or may try to do to compel the Western market, it recently considered an afterthought. It's going to cost them money, and it probably won't work. Number 3, feminism fatigue. Speaking of virtue signaling and leading with politics, all the early American marketing was pushing Mulan as a feminist movie. But more and more Americans are associating feminism less with a brave struggle for equality and more with shrill, pushy women looking for preferential treatment. In the promotional material, there's the director, front and center. The director and the lead actress. Yeah, the director's a woman. Who cares? Obviously you guys care. You think we should care, but we don't. It's important to Disney to have a woman because, you know, what was the quote? Something like, I think it's important for a woman to tell this story. This is a woman's story. It needs to be told by a woman. Just like, does it really though? Anyway, selling this film as feminist is going to turn people off. Look at the Karen stereotype. The Karen stereotype is a very recent invention. And that's because people are sick of women saying, this is important. You better pay attention to this. You know, you better pay attention to me. Karens are an anti-feminist caricature. That's where we're at. Number 2, theater uncertainty. Mulan will be the first major theatrical release since the pandemic seriously impacted theater revenue, causing new releases to be pushed back. Right around the same time, 3 months or so ago, theaters closed in response to quarantine altogether. Putting Mulan out in front is a big gamble. We know why Disney's doing it. They need to strike while the iron is lukewarm. They want to get the movie out while anyone might actually still care at all. They need money. If it fails, they can blame the failure on the pandemic, and it'll probably work. They could probably save face by saying, hey, pandemic. It wasn't a bad movie, it was the pandemic. And they could make a case for that. Seems a lot easier to stream a movie at home, doesn't it? And let's say you do actually have a theater that's nearby enough to go to. I mean, you're gonna have to observe social distancing, right? I mean, what is this gonna be? You and whoever you come with can sit together, but other than that, there's like 2 seats open behind you and next to you or whatever. Like everybody is like floating around in like a 1/4 full theater, maybe a half full theater. You wearing masks? Are you eating popcorn, or are you wearing a mask? I mean, the hassle of following these new rules. I don't see like people without kids going to see this movie. I don't see it as being like a date movie for teens or anything. I mean, it's even though it's not a kids movie, I think that's your best shot at an audience. And let's say people do go see it. Let's say the turnout is good initially. I don't think it's going to be a well-liked film. So then you're going to have negative word of mouth. Number 1, hostile media. Best case scenario, the film performs well. That is to say, the maximum 50% of theaters that are actually open, operating at maximum 50% capacity, sell out. They're just like, just all sell out. Turns out people are sick of quarantine, they're desperate to return to a state of semi-normalcy, throwing caution to the wind. The movie makes $500 million in America, which, considering the circumstances, would be phenomenal. It makes another $500 million internationally. Again, very optimistic considering the pandemic is ravaging much of the world. That's $1 billion gross. What's Disney going to say? Well, that's a hit. That's a hit, of course. A smash. An unmitigated success, especially considering the circumstances. But the media, I don't think the media is going to be so kind. Ever since Disney started getting into financial trouble, they've been prodding at them. They've been saying like, "Ooh, look at Disney. Look at Disney. Disney's doing bad. Oh, what's going on with their employees? Are they paying their employees? Oh, they're borrowing money." It's just like they're. I mean, I'm not talking about the shill media. Of course, Disney's got some people on the payroll. Even as strapped for cash as they are, they still have some of the press in their pocket. A fraction of what they had a few short months ago, but some. But Disney is a big, wounded, lumbering beast, and the media smells blood in the water. And all this media, especially the media that used to get handouts from Disney, that are no longer getting a turn at the trough, they need to pay the bills. They need those clicks. Media outlets are hurting too. And the lean times, predators get less picky about their prey. What's a better headline? Mulan is a hit, or Mulan killed by COVID-19? Disney film does marginally well, or Disney film flops? In the media's eyes, they did everything right in terms of marketing because they're virtue signaling their little hearts out. Pro-China, pro-women. But if a feminist, racially activist film succeeds, that sends the message that things are good. Well, what's wrong with that? Well, because how can things be good? Orange Man is in the White House. The black people are angry. Trans rights, global warming, blah, 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 whatever. The liberal media wants Americans in a state of frenzy. They're not interested in the country being happy. They won't permit it. They will not allow it until Democrats are back in power. Hillary said it herself. We'll be civil again once we're back in power. If you don't give us back in power, we're never going to be nice again. That's almost a direct quote. So, even if, defying all reason and the odds, Mulan is a huge hit, as huge of a hit as it can possibly be in the circumstances, the media will deny it. I mean, they're already saying movies that aren't hits are. Look at Birds of Prey. They have to pull those mental and verbal gymnastics to say, actually, Birds of Prey was a successful movie. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. You're lying to people. So if they're willing to say that a film that's not a success is a success, then of course they're going to be willing to say that a film that is a success isn't. If they didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. The story will be something like, Mulan would have done much better if not for systematic racism and sexism. Some crap like that. Otherwise, the narrative that they're promoting, that half the country is evil because half the country voted for Trump, so they're evil. Half the country's evil. Bad country. Everything's bad. Everything's terrible. And because of Trump. That's the narrative. And it's all about the narrative. And finally, here's my release prediction. Here's what I think is going to happen. Mulan will hit theaters in late July. It's gonna make that release date. To not do so is death. It's already been pushed back. Any faltering now will send a message that Disney doesn't have any faith in this film. The film's going to do badly. Terminator Dark Fate flopped with $261 million. That was basically like the entire run gross. Box office, $261 million. This is before the pandemic. Wasn't affected by that. Nobody, wasn't even a thing yet. I'm predicting that Mulan will do half that. As bad as, a AAA film making $261 million, it seems crazy. $261 million is a failure. You got to think of what they spend on these movies. Like I said, they spent $500 million on this, and Terminator probably spent $200 million at least. I don't know what they spent, but I mean, once you do the marketing, like I said, so Terminator made $261 million. It lost money. I remember them saying something about it losing like $170 million or something like that. Okay, I'm guessing Mulan is going to have a box office gross of about $130 million. $130 million. So half its initial budget before advertising. So I'm assuming that when all is said and done, they will have spent $500 million on this movie. That's a huge flop. So I'm guessing it's going to lose $350 million. That's my guess. Disney will blame the virus. The media will blame Trump. The other movies slated for theatrical release will go straight to streaming, and the theater industry will collapse. I guess we'll wait and see. Thanks for watching. See you next time.